Hey there. Tonight's story isn't the polished version you see in tales of dragons and kings. This one's slower, quieter. It's about bruises that don't make songs and duty that doesn't shine. If that kind of storytelling helps you unwind, feel free to like and subscribe, but only if it brings you some peace. Drop a comment. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is. I promise you're not the only one drifting off into history tonight. So, take a deep breath, let the fire in your imagination flicker to life, and let's begin at the start of a night's journey. You're 7 years old. That's when it all begins. Not with a sword, but with a farewell. Your parents proud, maybe even a little relieved, send you off to another household. A lord's estate. Not quite a goodbye, more like a pat on the shoulder. A wrapped bundle of clothes, and a silent agreement that you won't return the same. There's no ceremony, no keepsake, just the road ahead and the weight of expectations on a frame that hasn't finished growing. You are now a page. You arrive at a castle that looks more like a mountain made of stone than a home. Gray towers claw at the sky. The gates creak open. You pass through. And just like that, your old life ends. Inside, there's no shining armor or glorious purpose. Just chores. Lots of them. You scrub, you fetch, you serve, you clean up after nobles and animals alike. And truth be told, the animals are often easier to please. From sunup to well past sundown, you're running through halls with sore feet and a head full of rules. You assist at meals, deliver notes, hold platters during feasts until your arms tremble, and on a good day, you're allowed to polish armor. It sounds exciting. Until you're face to face with dried horse dung caked onto steel boots. Your hands blister. Your back aches. No one applauds. You are invisible to the people you one day hope to become. The knights barely register your name. You're not one of them. You're the help. And still training begins. Wooden swords are handed out, not to teach glory, but to teach bruises. You swing, you get hit, you swing again. You're taught how to fall off a horse without dying. You fall a lot. Honestly, falling starts to feel like the main lesson. You're not praised for toughness. You're punished for weakness. And so you learn, fast. You learn that pain is to be swallowed, not shown. You speak only when spoken to. You bow deeper to those with rank. You follow commands, even the dumb ones. Especially the dumb ones. Discipline isn't just expected, it's survival. One boy forgets to remove his cap in front of the lady of the house. He spends 2 days kneeling in the chapel praying for humility. No one forgets again. If your family's rich, you might get a tutor. You'll learn to read, write, maybe mumble your way through some Latin. If your family isn't, you listen and imitate. You memorize the Lord's prayers, learn to hold a fork properly, though fingers are more common, and you try not to nod off when the steward lectures on estate management. Every moment is a lesson, not in honor, but in how to survive long enough to reach it. You stand like a statue at court dinners, tray in hand, smile forced. You learn which jokes to laugh at, which feuds to avoid. You listen when the knights boast about battles, eyes glazing over, sore feet aching under you. The stories don't feel like inspiration. They feel like distant thunder, loud but far away. Yet still, a spark lights in you. Maybe one day, someone will sing your name. You sleep in the servants' quarters. Straw mats packed tight with other boys. Some snore. Some whisper prayers. The air is thick with sweat and mildew. Sometimes you're shaken awake to fetch something for a noble who forgot his wine, or to tend to unexpected guests. You never complain. You just rise. That's what's expected. That's what the training is for. There are others like you. Other pages. You don't speak much. but you share the same bruises, the same fears. Friendships are quiet, built through glances and shared rations. Together, you learn which corners of the castle offer 5 minutes of peace, which knights will cuff you for no reason, which cooks might sneak you a crust of bread on a good day. There's laughter, too. Sometimes, the stable master slips in manure. A knight falls face first after too much ale. Someone steals an apple and shares it in secret. You don't laugh loudly, but the laughter is there, and you cling to it because it reminds you that life exists beyond duty. Once in a while, you glimpse the outside world. A merchant caravan rolls in. Perfumed women on horseback pass through glittering like stars. Foreign fabrics, music, perfume. You press your nose to the window and wonder if you'll ever touch that life. Maybe. You wonder if this is truly the road to knighthood. The bruises, the hunger, the chores, the humiliation. But then you see a knight ride out, armor glinting pennant high, and something in your chest tightens. Someday, that could be you. Ceremonies happen. Not for you. Your background noise. Holding candles, cleaning floors. Watching nobles in silk garments you aren't allowed to touch. The castle becomes theater whenever dignitaries arrive. You polish things already clean. Sweep halls already swept. If something goes wrong, it's your fault. Always. So you learn to be invisible. On festival days, there's dancing music, laughter. The adults drink too much. You watch from the edges. Someone slips you a honey cake. For a few minutes, you forget your place. But only for a few minutes. Some boys find books. If they can read. You find stories, old tales of saints and warriors read aloud by the steward's scribe. They make you dream again, even as your hands crack from cold and your feet blister from standing. But not all stories are happy. You hear whispers of pages who didn't make it, who failed, who vanished. No one talks about them too loudly, but you hear enough. You learn when to speak, when to be silent, when to disappear. And in time, the castle shapes you, not into a knight, not yet, but into someone harder, someone watchful, someone who learns. At night, staring up at the beams above your straw mattress, you think about what comes next. The next phase, the next test, the next bruise. You are a page, and for now, that is enough. You're 14 when they tell you you're not a page anymore. There's no ceremony, no applause, just a new title. Squire sounds like a promotion, feels like a punishment. Gone are the days of sweeping and serving. Now, you belong to one man a night, and your life twists to match his. Wherever he rides, you follow. If he bleeds, you clean it. If he dies, it's your job to carry his sword home and his name with it. They say you're lucky. Not every page makes it to Squire. But as you shoulder your knight's shield saddle, his beast of a war horse, and polish his armor until your knuckles bleed, you wonder just how lucky you really are. The training, it ramps up hard. No more wooden swords. No more light drills in the courtyard. Now you're sparring with real steel. Not sharp enough to kill, but sharp enough to leave a scar. If your timing is off, or your footwork stumbles, you get bruises, big ones, ones that don't fade before the next set show up. You train from dawn till your knees give out. Swordplay, horsemanship, shield techniques, footwork. Fall wrong, and you'll feel it for weeks. Your knight doesn't expect grace. He expects grit. Fall behind and he won't wait. He has no time to coddle you. You quickly discover the most exhausting part of being a squire isn't the swordplay. It's the care. Armor is a living nightmare. You thought it was just metal. It's not. It's metal, leather, sweat, dirt, blood, and the occasional slug that somehow slithers into a joint. You clean it, You oil it. You test the buckles and the straps. If something pinches during battle, or worse breaks, you're the one they blame. And if that break costs your knight his life, that guilt will ride with you forever. Weapons must be sharpened daily. Lances tested for splinters or cracks. Shields checked for fractures. Everything must be perfect. If it is, no one says a word. If it's not, everyone notices. And then there are tournaments. When you were a page, tournaments were grand spectacles, flowers, flags, shining armor. Now, you see them for what they are. Controlled chaos. You're the one saddling the horse, adjusting the padding, making sure your knight's helmet visor moves without jamming. If he wins, you collect the prize coin. If he loses, you collect his shattered lance, his pride, and whatever pieces of him aren't broken. But then, real war comes, and you ride out with your knight. You're not fighting yet, but you're not safe either. You march through mud, rain, snow. You sleep on hard ground, eat cold meals, and pray your armor doesn't rust in the night. You carry water, carry messages, carry wounded men. You carry the weight of war without yet drawing blood. Your job is to keep your knight alive. That means dragging him out of the fray if he falls, lifting him up in full plate armor while arrows whistle past your ears. It means bracing his shield, cleaning his wounds, holding him steady when he can't walk. If he's captured, it's you they send to beg, to barter, to negotiate. Sometimes that means sneaking into enemy camps. Sometimes that means swallowing your pride and kneeling before the same knight who knocked your lord off his horse. You learn diplomacy not from books, but from desperation. You start to understand war, not the glorious kind no one sings about this, but the kind where men scream, where mud stinks of blood, where the ground is so soaked you can't tell if what you're stepping in was once human. Battle isn't noble. It's noise. You hear your name shouted once, maybe twice. Then it's gone, drowned in the roar of hooves, the clang of steel, the shriek of wounded horses. You don't fight, yet, but death brushes against your cloak anyway. You see knights fall, comrades vanish. You see what happens when a man is too slow, or too proud, or just unlucky. You bury your first friend, a fellow squire. He'd just turned 16. He tripped. That's all. Tripped beneath a charging horse. No one sings about him, but you remember. You don't cry. You can't. Not here. But you start to carry more than armor. You carry silence. You carry names. And in the quiet hours back at the campfire, you start to understand what you're becoming. There are still duties back at the castle. You help with banquets. You oversee the training of new pages. You pass down what little wisdom you've earned, the way to stand, the way to duck, how to avoid the angry knight who always swings wide. You move like a man older than you are. Your boots are worn, your sword calloused into your palm. And your body is tired, but you keep going. You start dreaming of your own heraldry, your own horse, your own squire. What your coat of arms might look like. A lion, a hawk, a mountain. You dream of the day they'll tap your shoulders with a blade and call you knight. But you know the cost. You've seen the price. You've cleaned blood from a visor and wept when no one was looking. And then the hard days come. You watch another squire fall, not to war, but to fear. He freezes in the melee, drops his sword, runs. He's sent home, or worse. No one says it, but everyone knows. You tell yourself you won't be him. You won't break. Not now. Not after everything. And maybe if your knight is kind, and not all are, he teaches you more than how to fight. He teaches you how to read a man, how to judge, when to speak, when to act, when to wait, how to lose gracefully, and win without gloating. These lessons stay longer than bruises. Winter comes, and your hands crack from the cold. Your fingers are stiff. Armor feels like ice, but you keep buckling it on. The world doesn't stop because your knuckles bleed. The war doesn't care about the weather. There are whispers of rebellion in the east, of kings summoning banners, of the next great march. You listen, you measure, you wait. Then one night, with ink-stained fingers and shaking hands, you write your first letter to your parents. Maybe. You don't know where to send it. You don't even know if they're alive. But writing it helps. It proves you're still human, still more than just sweat, steel, and survival. Later that night, your knight drunk on mead and memory tells you of his first battle. The rain, the hunger, the friends he lost. He stares into the fire and names them, one by one. You don't speak. You just listen and remember. Then, without warning, your name is called, not to fetch wine, not to clean boots, but to ride, to fight, to stand beside your knight as his second. You don't sleep that night. You don't need to. When the sun rises and you mount your horse, you are not fearless, but you are ready, not perfect, not complete, but ready. You are a squire, and you are becoming. You're 21, or close enough that it doesn't matter. Some squires are knighted earlier, some later, some never at all. But one day, a lord, or maybe the king himself, decides you're ready. Ready to kneel, ready to swear, ready to bear a blade, not just in practice, but in truth. You don't feel different. Your ribs still ache from last week's sparring. There's a bruise under your collarbone where a lance hit wrong. You haven't had a full night's sleep in 2 months, and your boots are still caked in mud. But this is it, the moment your whole life has been scraping its way toward, the knighting. It starts with solitude. They give you a chamber, small, cold, nothing grand, just bare stone, a single candle, a wool blanket, and the echo of your own thoughts. You're to keep vigil, pray fast, reflect, but mostly you shiver, you kneel, bones aching, stomach hollow, trying not to think about how warm the kitchens are downstairs, how the pork roast smells, how many people are laughing just beneath your feet while you're up here pretending to find clarity in a flickering flame. This vigil is meant to purify the soul, prepare you to uphold sacred vows, protect the weak, serve your Lord, defend the church. You're supposed to meditate on those things. Instead, your thoughts wander. You think about your first day as a page, the blister on your hand from polishing boots, the way the knight you now serve once shoved you aside without a glance. You think about the squire who died 2 winters ago, and the other one who ran during the siege, and the time you almost followed him. You wonder if you'll be a better knight than they were, or worse. You think about your parents, if they'd recognize you now, if they'd be proud, if they'd care. Come dawn, the vigil ends. You're led to the main hall. It's been transformed for the occasion. Banners hang from the beams. Candles burn low but bright. Nobles, knights, priests, they're all here. Their whispers hush as you enter. Your name echoes through the space, loud and strange in your ears. You step forward, kneel. The Lord approaches. He carries a sword, a polished ceremonial blade, likely never used, but symbolic all the same. A blade of service, of power, of purpose. You bow your head. The flat of the sword touches your left shoulder, then your right. You barely breathe. This is the dubbing. In some traditions, they also slap you, lightly. A symbolic blow to remind you that pain is part of the job, that your strength must be moral, not just physical. You don't flinch. You expect the slap. It comes. Then the oath. You speak slowly, carefully. You pledge loyalty to your Lord, to your faith, to the code of chivalry. You promise to protect women, to defend the helpless, to act with honor and justice. You mean every word, even the ones that sound too good for this world. You stand, a knight. The change is subtle. You're still hungry. You're still tired. You still have a loose thread in your tunic. But the way people look at you has shifted. Nobles nod. Peasants bow. Your peers clap your shoulder with new weight. Even your knight, the one who used to shout at you for forgetting his gauntlets, offers a brief approving glance. In noble language, that's a full standing ovation. There might be a feast. If your lord is generous, you sit higher at the table now. Your cup is silver, not wood. The meat is warmer, the bread thicker. People toast your name, some you've never met, but the celebration fades, as it always does. And once the banners are lowered and the candles snuffed out, you're left with a sword, a title, and a whole new set of expectations. Because knighthood isn't a destination, it's a door, one that opens into more responsibility. You're no longer the shadow beside a knight. You are the knight. People look to you now for decisions, for leadership, for protection. When you speak, it carries weight. When you act, it sets precedent. When you fall, it sets gossip on fire. Your word is binding. Your silence is noticed. Your presence is assumed. If you miss mass, people whisper. If you drink too much, people remember. One slip, and it's not just your name that's stained. It's your banner, your household, your oath. Suddenly, everything matters more. You're also a landholder now. Maybe. If your family had coin, or your lord saw fit to grant you land. If so, congratulations. You now manage peasants, fields, taxes, disputes, and the never-ending noise of running a small kingdom of mud and barley. Knighthood, it turns out, has more to do with ledgers than lances. But there are perks. You have your own squire now. He's nervous, young, eager. You see yourself in him. He forgets your straps, over-oils your blade, once tries to polish your boots with candle wax. You scold him. Then later, when no one's looking, you nod. That's all he wants. A little hope, a little purpose. The way you once wanted it. You start thinking about your coat of arms. What colors? What symbols? A stag, a tower, a falcon, mid-dive. It needs to mean something. It needs to tell a story before you even open your mouth. You might pay a herald to design it, or sketch it yourself in a quiet moment, sitting by the fire with a quill in one hand and a sore shoulder from training in the other. Then comes the armor. Real armor, not hand-me-down pieces, patched with leather and prayer. This is your armor, built for you, fitted like a second skin, forged by men who know your name. It's heavy, it's expensive, it's beautiful. The blacksmiths measure every limb, every angle. You stand still for hours while they hammer, adjust, tighten. Their fingers leave soot and sweat on your arms. You don't move. This armor will keep you alive. And maybe, just maybe, make you look like someone worth following. When you finally wear it, when you walk into the courtyard and the villagers pause to watch, there's pride. Not vanity, not exactly, just pride. A feeling that maybe all the bruises, the beatings, the nights sleeping in hay and hunger, maybe they were worth something. You ride through your village now, at the head of the line. Not trailing behind a noble's horse. Not carrying a tray of goblets, but upright, respected. Children stare, women smile, old men nod. You nod back, trying not to look too pleased. You dismount at the hall, strip your armor slowly, lay your sword down with care, and you look in the mirror. Not polished glass, just your reflection in a breastplate, warped and shining. Do you look like a knight? Maybe not yet, but you will, because even though the name is new and the armor still creaks and the world doesn't quite feel different, you are a knight, and your story has only just begun. You don't become a knight and suddenly feel powerful. You become a knight, and then you're handed 60 pounds of metal and told to walk in it, ride in it, fight in it, survive in it. The first lesson isn't how to swing a sword. It's how to breathe, because the armor doesn't care how noble your cause is it cares whether you buckle it right. It starts with chainmail, a tunic of interlocking rings that drapes from shoulder to thigh. It glints in the light like a fisherman's net, but it wears like a wet blanket made of razors. It's not as heavy as it looks, but it drags at your limbs and clings to your sweat. Underneath, you wear a gambeson quilted linen padded with rags or wool. It's thick, smelly, soaked in last week's training. But without it, the mail would tear you apart. Eventually, the armor evolves. Breastplate, greaves, pauldrons, sabatons, plate over mail joints, articulated rivets groaning when you move. Every piece designed to protect and to remind you with each clank and scrape that movement is now a calculated act. You're no longer agile. You are deliberate. And the helmet is the worst. It muffles your hearing, narrows your vision. Your own breath steams up the inside, fogging your sight just when you need it most. Some helms have visors you can lift. They help with spitting and breathing, but they also turn your face into a target. Everything is a trade-off. Mobility for protection, vision for defense, breathability for the small hope of keeping your head. You train for months, years, just to move properly in your second skin. You learn to walk, crouch, mount a horse, roll without dislocating something. You learn to move like the armor wants you to, not how you want to. And maintenance, that's another battle entirely. Every plate must be oiled, checked, cleaned. A single rusty rivet can lock your elbow. A bent strap can make your chest plate pinch or worse slide mid-battle and expose your heart. Your squire learns fast. He scrubs till his hands are raw, hammers out dents, tests every hinge, because if he misses something, if you fall because of it, he carries that forever. And then there are the weapons. Your sword isn't the elegant rapier-thin blade of paintings and ballads. It's broad, heavy, designed to smash through mail, not dance around it. It's sharpened, yes, but not so fine it chips. You need it sturdy, more than beautiful. It becomes a part of you. You strap it to your hip and feel its weight when you sleep, when you walk, when you breathe. Then there's the lance, a 10-foot shaft of hardwood with a steel tip. Couched under your arm, balanced against your side, it turns your horse's charge into a battering ram. It's unwieldy, clumsy, and terrifying. One tilt, one charge, and it splinters like lightning. Sometimes it misses. Sometimes it doesn't. You use a shield, too. Kite-shaped or heater-style strapped to your forearm or slung across your back. It bears your colors, your coat of arms, your identity in battle. It's both a banner and a barrier. You learn to punch with it, to block with it, to lead with it. It's your wall, and when it breaks, so do you. Other weapons find their way into your hands. A mace, short, blunt, brutal. Good for crushing helmets when a sword just bounces off. An axe, ugly, honest, effective. You can hook a shield, tear through mail, drag a man off his saddle. Not noble, but neither is war. On the battlefield, everything is real. You don't get points for style. You get to live, or not. Siege weapons are handled by engineers. You don't operate them. You watch them. Learn to fear them. A trebuchet doesn't care how well made your armor is. A boulder doesn't yield to a prayer. When the charge begins, there is no time to think. You ride, lance down, shield up, visor down. The field narrows. The roar grows. The world shrinks to the sound of hooves and the blur of an enemy crest. Then impact. It's sudden, absolute. Either you hit or you don't. Either you fall or you don't. And if you fall, your squire might drag you out before the trampling starts. If he doesn't, well, you won't know. Assuming you're still upright, what follows is the melee, sword drawn. You fight man to man, no formation, no rules, just instincts. You aim for joints, armpits, thighs, visor slits, the weak points. Every knight has them. You hope you find his before he finds yours. The noise is indescribable. The smell's worse. Blood, iron, sweat, fear. You don't think in words. You think in inches. Every foot forward is survival. Every breath a gamble. When it's over, if it's over, you stagger back to camp. Strip your armor off piece by piece. Every dent tells a story. Every scratch a lesson. If a rivet broke, you remember. If your sword chipped, you fix it. You don't sleep until your kit is battle ready again, because tomorrow you might need it more than ever. You learn the difference between good steel and bad. You know every blacksmith by name. You feel the balance of a blade in your hand like you'd feel a shift in the wind. Some knights decorate their gear. Engraved pommels, gold trim, painted breastplates, if you have the coin, sure. But under the flourishes, the truth is the same. Armor isn't a costume. It's the only thing between you and the grave. There are downsides, obvious ones. Armor is expensive, heavy, unforgiving. A summer in plate feels like marching inside a furnace. You sweat through your gambeson, you faint if you don't hydrate. And the smell, you stop noticing it, but others don't. Still, you wear it because you trust it. You've tested it. You've felt a mace land on your chest plate and lived to tell the tale. You've felt an arrow glance off your pauldron and whispered thanks to the smith who forged it. You've walked through fire and come out clanking. But you never forget this armor buys time. Not certainty. A lucky arrow, a slipped buckle, a bad fall. That's all it takes. At night, you unstrap each piece slowly, reverently. You place your sword by your bed. You stretch sore shoulders, and you remember, under all that steel, you are still flesh, still vulnerable, still human. And in those quiet moments, sitting beside your armor stand, with your gloves cooling and your knuckles cracked, you start to understand something deeper. You're not made of steel. You just wear it well. You've trained for years, carried swords before you ever swung one, watched men die before you ever drew your own blade in real war. You've polished armor until your knuckles bled, cleaned blood from your knight's visor, slept in mud, slept in fear, and yet none of it truly prepares you. Not for this, not for the moment the trumpet sounds. Your horse shifts beneath you. The enemy lines ripple across the field, a wall of banners, iron, and nerves. The battlefield isn't poetry. It's not a chessboard, not a noble stage for songs and saints. It's a storm, alive, a groaning, screaming, pulsing thing. Mud, blood, metal, and panic all tangled into something that doesn't feel real until you're already in it. And by then, it's far too late. War begins long before swords clash. You march for days, weeks sometimes, through rain and mist and sun that burns your skin raw. The camp stinks sweat, dung smoke, and rot. Tempers snap like bowstrings. Feet blister. Horses spook. You stop talking. You grunt. You nod. That's all. You become another shadow in an army too large to name. Food is hard bread and dried meat that tastes like old rope. Water is precious iffy and sometimes worse than thirst. Your armor is cold at sunrise, scorching by noon. You sleep in your boots. Your sword never leaves your side. Then one morning it comes. You ride over a ridge and see them. The other army, glinting in the pale light. Helmets like beetle shells. Spears like wheat. Your gut twists. Your mouth goes dry. Your heart doesn't race. It waits. Commanders shout orders. You nod along. But your thoughts aren't there. They're nowhere. You're checking your saddle, tightening your grip, whispering whatever prayer you half remember. And then the horn, the charge. It isn't elegant. It's thunder. Hooves tear up the earth. You ride, lance lowered, shield up, eyes locked forward. The world collapses into a tunnel. Just you, your horse, and the man who's coming just as fast from the other side. There's no room for fear, only for action. You hit, or miss, or you're hit. Or worse, you fall. If you fall, your world flips. Sky, mud, hooves, screams. You scramble up, heavy and disoriented, visor crooked. If your squire finds you, he might drag you to safety. If he doesn't, the boots come. The trampling, the weight of war itself pounding your ribs. And if you don't move fast enough, you become part of the field, just another body. But if you stand, then comes the melee, the real fight. No formations, no banners, just men and metal and mayhem. You swing your sword, you block a blow, then another. You don't think, you react. Your blade lands. Sometimes, your shield cracks. Your breath shortens. You can't hear anything beyond the chaos, just the clanging of steel and the scream of someone who might have once been your friend. You learn to aim for the soft spots, behind the knee, under the arm, the neck, the eye slit, not for honor, but survival. You don't feel heroic. You feel tired. Your arms burn. Your vision narrows. Every heartbeat is a gamble. You push forward, or sideways, or anywhere that isn't where the next swing is coming from. And all the while, the mud clings. Blood slicks your grip. The taste of metal fills your mouth. Even when you haven't been hit, you stumble. A mace glances off your side. You stagger. You barely register the pain. You just keep going. Because if you stop, you don't get up. There are no clean victories, even when the enemy flees, even when the horn sounds again, and someone shouts, "We've won," because you look around and see who didn't rise. Friends, comrades, squires who laughed around last night's fire, gone. You don't smile, you don't cheer, you just breathe, and hope the next breath isn't your last. Later, you walk the field, crows already circling. The moans of the dying rise like mist. You try to help, but there are too many. Some you give water to, some you leave prayers with, some you finish, because it's kinder that way. Your boots are soaked in blood. You stop noticing. Looters are already at work, stripping the dead, pulling rings from fingers, daggers from belts, even boots, if they're dry. You look away. You don't stop them. You don't have the energy. You find your squire, alive, shaking, his eyes wide. He doesn't speak. Neither do you. Not for hours. That night, there is no celebration, no songs, no toasts. You sit by a dying fire, your gloves still stained, your armor dented in 3 places, and you listen to the silence between breaths. That silence becomes sacred because it means you're still here. You wake sore, stiff, sore in places you didn't know could hurt. Your horse is limping. Your hand shakes as you fasten your belt. But you're alive, and in war that counts. In the days that follow, the story changes. Minstrels arrive. Songs are written. Poems composed. Speeches made about courage and duty and faith. The priests bless your bloodshed. The lords hand out rewards. You ride into town. People cheer. Children toss flowers. Old men bow. You wave. You smile. But inside, all you can see is the field, the mud, the faces, the smell, the moment the charge hit. You don't talk about it. When squires ask what battle is like, you speak of tactics, footwork, sword play. You don't speak of the sobbing man you stepped over, the boy who begged, the friend who fell. You train them well. Teach them to check their straps twice. Keep their shields high, because those details save lives. You've seen what happens when they're forgotten. Scars fade, eventually, but the memories stay, etched not in songs, but in muscle, in reflex, in silence. And still you ride, because there's always another war, always another field, always someone younger, more eager, less prepared. You don't seek glory anymore. You seek survival. You seek clarity, and you try, in whatever small way you can, to help those beside you live long enough to gain it too. This is what it means to fight, not for banners, not for poems, but for the men on either side of you. The squire still too green to know better, the veteran too broken to care. You were shaped by steel, But you were forged in this field, and it has taught you one truth. Every inch of ground is paid in blood. War may forge your reputation, but tournaments write it in gold. When the fighting slows, when borders settle, when the banners come down and the cannons go quiet, there's still a hunger in your bones. A need to move, to test yourself, to ride not with death behind you, but with the crowd before you. So you turn to the tournament, not war, but combat, not carnage, but contest. It starts with an invitation, if you're lucky, if your name means something, or if your lord has enough coin to grease the wheels. You arrive with your squire in tow, your armor shined, your banner fluttering above your tent like a resume made of silk. Your horse has been brushed until its coat glows. Your sword's been sharpened more for show than slashing. The town is already buzzing. Merchants hawking meat pies, children screaming your name if they remember you from the last melee. The list field is marked out in the center of it all. Wooden stands, colorful pennants, noble spectators dressed to impress. It's a fairground, but beneath the music and laughter is tension. This isn't a game. This is blood wrapped in ritual. The two main events are the melee and the joust. The melee is a chaotic brawl. Dozens of knights, mounted or on foot, charging at each other across open ground. Shields up, weapons blunt, but not harmless. You fight to disarm, to unhorse, to overwhelm. You fight until only a few remain upright, or until the marshals blow the horn and drag the exhausted off the field. There are rules, but not really. You enter with your team. Your squire checks your straps one last time. You nod to him. You nod to yourself. The horn sounds, and then it's on. You swing. You block. You fall. You rise. You lose your footing. A shield smacks your jaw. You strike someone hard enough that they stagger. You don't stop. You fight like it matters. Because it does. Your pride's on the line. Your reputation. Your next invitation. Sometimes even your next meal, if you make it to the end. If you're one of the last few. Standing, the crowd roars. Your name echoes through the stands. You don't smile. You limp off the field, blood trickling from your nose, and you sit down next to your squire without saying a word. He hands you water. You drink and breathe. Later comes the joust. This is the main event, the centerpiece. One-on-one. Two knights, two horses, two lances. You face off at opposite ends of the tilt yard, separated by a wooden rail. You hear your name called. Feel the crowd's eyes on you. A lady ties a ribbon to your lance. You lower your visor. Everything slows. Then the flag drops. The hooves pound. You and your opponent rush toward each other. Lances, aimed bodies, braced minds clear. Impact is immediate, absolute. If your aim is true, your lance shatters against his shield. If it's not, you're the one flying backward, air knocked from your lungs. Sometimes you hit so hard, the splinters pierce through your opponent's mail. Sometimes they hit you harder. You don't always rise, but when you do, and you raise your visor, and the crowd still cheering you, feel invincible. For a second. Afterward, there's the feast. The nobles dine under torchlight. Roast boar, spiced wine. Musicians playing songs that only vaguely resemble the real fights they pretend to honor. You sit stiff in a doublet that fits like punishment. Your bruises throb beneath it. Your ribs complain with every breath. Someone claps you on the back. You laugh too loud. You drink too deep. Because that's the show. A noble woman asks about your tilt. You explain. Short words. Trying to sound charming. Trying not to sound like you still feel like throwing up. Another knight brags about his broken lance. You nod. You've heard it before. You've said it before. Tournaments are theater, but they're not harmless. You've seen a lance splinter and send shards into the crowd. You've seen a helmet buckle and a man not get back up. You've seen knights cheat weighted lances, sabotaged saddles, bribes whispered behind the marshal's tent. Sometimes it's not the field that gets you, it's the politics. But you keep coming back. Why? Because for 1 week, you're not just a blade in the mud. You're a name. You're a figure carved on banners. You're a whispered bet in a noble's ear. You're the reason a child picks up a stick and charges his brother. Even if you lose, even if you limp away. For that one bright moment, you were seen. Of course it's expensive. Entry fees, new armor, fresh horses, bribes if you're unlucky. A bad tournament can empty your coffers. You count coins with aching fingers, wondering if you should have pulled out of that last match before your shoulder popped. Some knights go into debt chasing the next tournament. Some sell land. Some switch to less noble strategies, fixing matches, sabotaging gear, hiring men to rough up rivals in the alley. You try not to, but you see it happen. Still you return, always, because glory in war is rare and often buried with the body. But glory in the list, it shines, it spreads, it sticks. If you win enough, you get noticed. Invitations to bigger events. Paris, London, maybe Rome, or so the stories say. You dream of it, just like you once dreamed of knighthood. You know better now, but still you hope. At the end of it all, your body's a battlefield of its own. Bruised, battered, your squire works late into the night, hammering dents from your shield, washing dried blood from your gambeson. You drink water spiked with herbs to dull the pain. You sleep fitfully. You wake early because another tilt awaits, and another after that. You fight. You bleed. You bow. And if you win, you smile through cracked lips. You were the main event, even if just for a moment. You weren't at war, but you were in combat. This is the tournament circuit, and you're still standing. You return from the road, not to cheers, not to trumpets, but to ledgers, to fences that need mending, to grain that needs counting, to peasants that need calming. Because you're not just a knight anymore. You're a landholder, a lord's vassal, a keeper of some small corner of the world. Your estate isn't grand, not really. A scattering of thatched roofs, a chapel, a mill, a hall with smoke-stained rafters and uneven floors. But it's yours, granted for service, rewarded for loyalty, or maybe just a way for your lord to put distance between you and his court. Either way, you are responsible, not just for land, for people. They don't care what battles you've fought, what banners you've shattered. They care about pigs gone missing, about fences broken by wind, about whose cow trampled whose barley. You sit beneath a banner bearing your coat of arms while a dozen petitioners line up to speak. One says his neighbor stole his goose. Another claims his cousin insulted his daughter. A third simply kneels and asks for grain because the rain never came. You listen, you nod, you try to look wise. You pass judgment. You settle quarrels. You speak louder than necessary, so everyone hears you've still got strength in your voice. The peasants file out, mostly satisfied. You hope. Then come the retainers, your men-at-arms, and their disputes are worse. One accuses the other of stealing a hound. Another says his cousin trespassed on hunting grounds. Tempers rise quicker when swords are involved. You step in, not as a fellow warrior, but as master. Firm, clear, no room for argument. They bow. Or at least they try. But you see the stiffness in their shoulders. You're not just their leader. You're the balance they're measuring every day. You also collect taxes. Wool, grain, coin when it's possible, chickens when it's not. You tally what you can. You keep enough to pay your men. You send the rest up the ladder toward your lord, toward his lord, toward the crown. And you never see it again. You don't ask where it goes. You just sign the parchment and nod. The fields need inspecting. You ride slowly, passing the rows of barley, the flax, the tired backs of peasants who pretend not to watch you. You speak with the reeve. He tells you of labor shortages, of a broken wheel on the cart, of whispers in the village about another lord's taxes being lighter. You pretend not to hear. You nod. Again, you always nod. Because you're not just listening. You're calculating. Then there's the hall. Your hall. The roof leaks. The wine cellar stinks. One of the hounds chewed through a banister again. You sigh. You call for the carpenter. You walk with the steward. You check grain stores. You sniff and grimace and say words like mildew and barter price and winter prep. You don't really know what you're saying sometimes, but you've learned the tone matters more than the detail. The people want a knight who sounds like a lord, so you fake it until it becomes your voice. Once a month you hold a feast, not out of generosity, but out of necessity. Your tenants need to see your face, need to eat your bread, need to believe their service buys a little closeness to power. You eat last. You smile too much, but you remind them gently that loyalty is a two-way road. Then comes the church. Your priest hovers. He preaches gently. He reminds you of sin, of confession, of the last time you skipped Mass. You nod to him too. You make a donation, enough to smooth over your absence, enough to ensure the sermon next Sunday mentions your pious devotion and not your lingering wine hangover. Your servants grumble. One forgot to turn the cheese in the cellar. Another slipped out to meet a traveling minstrel and came back glowing and giggling. Your cook yells about the flour again. Your chambermaid drops a goblet eyes wide with panic. You don't yell. You just breathe in and nod. Your squire still trains, still forgets things, still brings the wrong sword on the wrong day. But he tries. You see it in his posture, in the way he watches you, hoping to catch a nod of approval, like it's worth more than a purse of gold. So you give it to him. Not always, but just enough. Your wife, if you have one, rules her domain, like a general. She handles the servants, the linens, the accounts, the gossip. She knows who's pregnant, who's stealing, who's thinking of leaving. She also knows when you've had too much to drink, when you forgot to send that letter to your cousin, and when your bootstrap is frayed and going to snap mid-hunt. She tells you these things bluntly, then kisses your forehead and reminds you that the bishop is coming next week. And if you fall asleep during his sermon again, she'll make you sleep in the stables. You don't argue. She's scarier than any knight you've ever met. During famine years, everything changes. Your role isn't strength, it's balance. You plead with your lord for relief. You ration what grain you have. You watch your people shrink. You know that if they die, your land dies too. So you give them just enough. You pray it's enough. And if there's plenty, you make sure they know it came from you. Bread passed out at the chapel. Coins dropped by accident in the square. It's not vanity. It's theater. And theater keeps the walls standing. Your people call you my lord. You don't know if it's respect or resentment or habit. You ride past them, in your armor shining but heavy. They nod. They step aside. You don't meet their eyes too long, because you're their protector, but you're also their tax, their judge, their executioner. Guests visit, knights, minor nobles, all of them full of stories and hunger. You host them like a juggler balancing daggers. Too little food, and they whisper. Too much food, and they think you're rich enough to be taxed more. You walk the tightrope. One word about politics, just one, and suddenly you're being watched. One poorly cooked pigeon, and your guest swears vengeance because his cousin's brother once raised pigeons for the king. You smile, you nod, you drink, you endure. And when they leave, you sit in silence by the fire and don't move for a full hour. And yet there are moments, small ones. You ride out at dawn and nod to shepherds who've already been awake for hours. You sit by the fire with your sergeant at arms, both of you groaning about knees and pretending you weren't terrified at last month's skirmish. You speak a name over a child at a baptism. You speak a farewell at a funeral. You watch your land breathe. You don't feel powerful. You feel responsible. And somehow that feels heavier. You don't swing your sword much anymore, but you still carry the weight of peace, of order, of structure. No bard sings of this. No chronicle records it. But you know the truth. A knight defends his name with a blade, but he keeps it alive with a ledger, with a fair judgment, with a repaired fence. This is the other war, not fought in blood, but in decisions. Quiet, constant, crucial. And you fight it every day. You rise with the dawn, not because of discipline, not anymore, but because your joints wake before you do. Your shoulder clicks when you lift your tunic. Your knees complain before your boots are laced. You've stopped pretending you're young. The steward greets you with a respectful nod. He doesn't talk unless needed. Your squire, well, not really a squire anymore, follows close behind, quiet, watchful. He carries your sword with care, but he doesn't offer it unless you ask. He knows you don't wear it every day now. You step outside, expecting the usual routine. But something feels different. Not the sky, not the air, the rhythm. The village is quieter. The fields seem busier somehow, but with fewer bows and more books. The banners are still there, but they hang low, faded, more symbolic than commanding. And you begin to see it. The age is shifting. You're still a knight, but fewer people need one. You still ride out, still wear the armor, still train the boys who come up from the pages with wide eyes and sharp elbows. But when they look past you, they see something else. Engineers, captains, men with compasses and gunpowder and straight lines drawn on folded maps. The future doesn't ride a warhorse anymore. The first time you see a musket fired in anger, it feels wrong. There's no elegance, no stance, just smoke. Bang, a man down. You blink. That's it. Where's the swing? The clash? Later that night, you still clean your sword. Not because it was used, but because it matters. Habit, defiance, maybe both. You still serve your lord. But now he sends for you less often. He wants grain tallies, reports, documents. Not writers, not warriors. You're still respected publicly. They call you sir at court. But you notice the way the younger nobles speak with the clerks first, not the veterans. The halls you once walked with pride now echo with a different sort of voice. Quieter, calculating, efficient. The old knights gather less and less, and when you do meet, it's in silence. You nod across the room. You don't talk about battles anymore. You don't have to. You can see the memories in their eyes, the weight in their gait, the ache in the way they lower themselves to sit. Your armor gathers dust more often than not. Your squire oils it still, out of respect, out of habit. It's heavy now, not just in weight, but in memory. Every dent is a friend you lost. Every rivet is a night you survived. You wear it sometimes. Ceremonies, parades, feast days, when they want the children to see what a real knight looked like. One day, a boy tugs your cloak, points to your breastplate, asks if it's real. You smile. You say yes, but you don't correct him when he calls it old-fashioned. You begin to understand what your own knight must have felt. The quiet ache of becoming irrelevant, not all at once, but slowly, like ice forming in the corners of a window. The pageantry still remains. Some of it. The jousts continue. But now, they're more spectacle than honor, more sport than test. The nobles cheer for blood, not bravery. The crowd knows your name, but they call it like a tribute, not a threat. Feast days are quieter. The music isn't worse, just softer. The minstrels still sing of knights, but always in past tense. You raise your cup anyway. You nod when they glance at you during the verse about valor in days of yore. You try not to mind. Privately, you walk the grounds more. You ride the old paths, the ones you once galloped on, armored and alert, now taken at a slow trot. You visit the fields where you once drilled squires. Now they've become wheat fields, quiet, useful. A few peasants still bow as you pass. You nod to them, more gently than you used to. They don't know what you've seen. They don't need to. The blacksmith's son wants to become a clerk. The miller's daughter talks about schooling. You nod at them too, and mean it. The world is changing, and you've accepted that. Mostly. Your body doesn't agree with long rides anymore. Your breath shortens faster. Your fingers tremble if you hold a cup too long. Your blade feels heavier than it used to. But your squire grown now walks beside you like you once walked beside your knight. Respectfully, silently, knowing he still calls you sir. You allow it. It costs nothing. And maybe it still means something. One night quietly, you pass him your sword. No audience. No ceremony. Just a quiet moment by the fire. He takes it in both hands, doesn't speak, doesn't need to. He understands, and you feel something settle. Not sadness, not pride, just peace. A kind of peace. The hall is quieter now. You don't lead anymore. You advise. You observe. You exist like a relic that still functions, still holds weight, but isn't used every day. And that's okay. You've survived things few men could. You lived through the charge, the crush, the cry. You held the line. You buried friends. You made peace with the things you couldn't change. And you carried your oath longer than most men carry their breath. Sometimes you walk the old battlefield. It's farmland now. Quiet. You kneel at the marker stone. The name's mostly faded. The grass growing tall around it. You don't cry. You just remember. And at night, the dreams come more often. Not nightmares. Just flashes. A lance shattering. A comrade's laugh. The taste of rain before a fight. The smell of wet leather. The silence after the horn. You write more now. You try to capture it. What it meant. To be a knight. Not just the sword. Not just the oath. But the living of it. You don't know if anyone will read it. Maybe one boy. Maybe none. But it matters to write it. Because someone should know. Not the polished stories. Not the statues and stained glass. But the truth. That it was hard. That it was cold. That it was loud and lonely and beautiful. You still pray. Not every day. Not always in church. But in quiet ways. In the way you help your squire. In the way you kneel beside a wounded horse. In the way you sit beside your wife and don't speak, because sometimes silence is the truest prayer. You don't seek glory anymore. You don't seek applause. You just seek peace. And you find it in strange places. A shared joke over poor stew. A child's smile. A warm patch of sun on the old stone wall. One day, a boy will point at a tapestry in a chapel. Who's that, he'll ask. And maybe, just maybe, someone will say your name. Not the battles, not the banners, just the man. That will be enough. That has always been enough.